I want to shift gears for a few minutes. I want to talk about this individual. I was a history teacher. I love history. And I used to share with my students Bertrand Russell and some others, and these people who had this vision for what they called a scientific dictatorship. Bertrand Russell was a British aristocratic elite, and he said, we can manage and control society, and there will be a day coming when the elites, the folks in our position, will have so much control over society, more so than the communists ever dreamed of. But we'll use tactics that are different than the communists. We'll use the education system, for example, said Bertrand Russell. In fact, he said education should aim at destroying free will so that by the time the child leaves school, he will be incapable of thinking otherwise than his schoolmasters would have thought. Now, as a teacher, I love this quote. Children should be taught to be thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts. One of my favorite educational theorists said that. That's a cool statement. Bertrand Russell's view of education was, no, actually through diet, injections, and injunctions, he said, we can produce the sort of character in the young that it will be impossible for them, that they won't be able to rebel. He said we could tell them snow is black and they would believe it. We can have total control. But then he actually says this, not education, but the greatest, the most important of all the modern agents of propaganda, said Bertrand Russell, is the cinema, leading to almost worldwide uniformity. The great majority of young people in almost all civilized countries derive their ideas of love, of honor, of the way to make money, and of the importance of good clothes from the evening spent in seeing what Hollywood thinks good for them. Then he says this, I doubt whether all the churches and schools combined have as much influence as the cinema on the opinions of the young. The producers of Hollywood are the high priests of a new religion. That's a strong statement. And that was a long time ago. I wonder how much more influence the cinema has today, or how much more influence the music industry has today, which we're not covering during this miniature version today. But music industry has immense power and influence over the minds, shaping the values and thoughts of the masses. But he said, these are the high priests of a new religion. They have more influence than all the churches and schools combined. And remember what he said about education. Wow. Now another individual, he was an American, actually an Austrian-American. His name is Edward Bernays. He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Now where Sigmund Freud looked at the individual psyche, Bernays was more interested in the mass mind. In fact, he worked as propaganda minister, as a propaganda artist for the U.S. government during World War I, and wrote what became the textbook for Nazi propaganda, actually, because he was such a genius on how to manipulate the mass mind. He's known most famously probably for getting women to smoke in America. A little quick story. The cigarette companies came to him, said, can you get women to smoke? They don't smoke, and we want them to buy our products. So Bernays said, yes, I'll hire the suffragettes, the women who are marching for the right to vote. He had them hide a little cigarette in the cuff of their blouse, and the women who were marching for the right to vote, very popular women, he said, when you get to the end of your parade, take out your cigarette, light it, smoke it, and lift it up like this, and shout together, torches of freedom! And now associated in the mass mind, women smoking with popular people, the American true values of Lady Liberty standing there with the torch and the right to vote, and you've now got all these associations building. Women started smoking in America. Bacon and eggs. The reason we have bacon and eggs on every breakfast menu across this fair land is Edward Bernays. He did an advertising campaign that put those together in our minds. Now, listen to what he had to say. He said, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it? That's chilling, isn't it? But listen to what else he says. He says the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Now that doesn't sound too democratic to me, but he says we are consciously and intelligently manipulating the habits and opinions of the masses. Going on with the quotation. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. Powerful statement. They were a lot more honest back then, I guess, about what they were up to. But if that was the kind of influence he had with his advertising elite, he's the founder of modern public relations, he's the founder of advertising in America. Almost 100 years ago, they had that level of influence. How much more today with the high-tech 21st century tools of mass manipulation at their disposal? Well, I want to show you one more individual, second most important person in advertising. His name is Ernest Dichter. He founded the Institute of Motivational Research, and in his institute, they had courses. And here's a leaked document from one of the courses or classes that they taught. And I'm just going to read just the bottom line of the highlighted part. He talks about how they are teaching students in this course to enter the alpha brainwave pattern. So in other words, we are actually studying and learning as advertisers how to change brainwave frequencies. It makes a lot more sense knowing what Mark J. Ryan has exposed with the advertisers and Hollywood. Mark J. Ryan being the professional hypnotist I mentioned who's on the DVDs. But this is a very telling quotation from a backstage conversation, Walt Mueller's Youth Culture 101. He quotes a advertising executive as saying to him, "We've taken a page from Satan's book. Find a point of weakness and lust in every man, woman, and child, and target that weakness and make them want to buy the product." So sometimes we catch them at very honest moments. Yeah, pretty much that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're targeting the weaknesses of people, just like Satan, their lusts, and we make them want to buy what it is we're selling. Wow. Now, when you look at the music industry, there's comments like this from MTV founder Robert Pittman. "The strongest appeal you can make is emotionally. If you can get their emotions going, make them forget their logic, you've got them. At MTV, we don't shoot for the 14-year-olds. We own them." Wow. So music industry, a strong propaganda mechanism, just like Hollywood, just like advertising. But it's not just that. Look at what the scholars are saying. This is a anthropologist of music named A.P. Merriam. He said the importance of music, as judged by the sheer ubiquity of its presence, is enormous. There is probably no other human cultural activity which is so all-pervasive and which reaches into, shapes, and often, what's that next word? Controls so much of human behavior. From a scholarly standpoint, from a cultural anthropologist standpoint, it's music above all else that can control human behavior. You have to see Disc 4 to understand the full gravity of that and how Satan will use music to deceive the last day masses. But a couple more slides on music and then we'll move back to the others. One more slide. This is Jimi Hendrix. I appreciate, again, the candor of his statements. He says music is a spiritual thing of its own. You can hypnotize people with the music. And when you get them at their weakest point, you can preach into the subconscious what you want to say. And I want to say again, if I've mentioned one thing in here, there's a lot more evidence on that same point in the full seminar. But there you have Jimi Hendrix saying, yeah, well, we're hypnotizing people and then preaching into their subconscious through the music. And it's the same thing happening today. You'll see modern examples, the more current examples as well. Back to some Hollywood people. And I should mention, by the way, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of darkness of this dark world. The demons, Satan, they are the enemy. Human beings are not the enemy. So Jimi Hendrix and Paul Schrader, for example, these people are not our opponents. These are children of God who we are to reach out to and witness to. But they've been public with their statements, and I'm just giving them a wider audience for what they wanted to share publicly so that we can be warned. Paul Schrader said this. He's a screenwriter, filmmaker. "We are there to thumb our nose at your values. We don't care if you like us. We don't like you. People think that Hollywood has principles, morals, and values. It doesn't." Kevin Smith said a similar thing. "I always like to think of it as I've got him sitting there, whip a little message at him, whip a little moral at him, whip a little of what my view of the world is, because that's what every good filmmaker does." So here's a couple examples of Hollywood filmmakers say, we're thumbing our nose at you, we're whipping our morals and values at you, and we just don't like you. Hollywood doesn't have principles, morals, and values, they say. But actually they do have a religion. If you look at the studies, University of Texas did a study in 1998, showed only less than 3% of Hollywood actors and filmmakers and so on are attending religious services on a regular basis. So most of them don't go to church, but they are very religious. I want you to look at the testimony of FAIRUZA BALK. She was the star in the witchcraft movie, The Craft. She's a top Hollywood insider. She knows the people there. And here's what she had to say about witchcraft. "A lot of actors, who don't mention their names, of course, are very much into this. this, meaning witchcraft. So they are religious people largely in Hollywood, and I'm not going to name names and take guesses, but there are several on record bragging about it from Hollywood and the music industry. I'm leaving out over an hour of content about the demonic nature of what's happening in the entertainment industry. But take it from FAIRUZA BALK. A lot of these actors are very much into this, meaning spiritualism, witchcraft, the occult, whatever you want to call it. So that, I wish I could tell you all about that and do the whole expose on that. You'll have to see that on the DVDs, but I want people to be warned about this. This is not just about digging up dirt and criticizing people, but I want people to know that they are dabbling in spiritualism, that they're stepping into the devil's territory. We're looking at serious spiritual issues there with her quotation. But it's also game designers. Game designers admit it. One game designer anonymously said, "We make it just like gambling." You ever wonder how it's so addictive? You ever wonder how gaming, there's 19 million addicts, right? Because we make it just like gambling. Back to the quotation, sometimes you get something, sometimes you don't. Another game designer anonymously stated the following in an interview with journalists. He says, "We use the principle that Madison Avenue uses called the blink rate." Madison Avenue being the advertisers. So we use the blink rate where people stop blinking if an ad has their attention. Same here. If you're into a game, your pupils dilate. Your blink rate slows down. He also went on to say that the job of video game design was all about the dynamics of using adrenaline. And he said the way that you manipulate their adrenaline response is make the player think that he's going to die. So here you have game designers admitting it. We do it like gambling. We're messing with adrenaline. They know how to elicit chemical responses in us to get us hooked and into the game. There's so much more on this that I'm leaving out, but just a couple of bits so you can know it's not just Hollywood. It's not just the advertisers. It's not just the music industry. It's even the gaming designers know what they're doing. And the Bible says, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. Now, the Bible also actually says the opposite. We aren't to be taken captive, but take a look at this, that we should take every thought captive. Now, the more media we're consuming, the more we are subjecting ourselves to the influence of these people, the more we are going to be taken captive, whether we know it or not. We're down into this altered state of consciousness, and we don't have our circuits firing in the same way God designed us to be. So we can't take thoughts captive when we're under that trance. But the reality is God has something better for us. Now, I want to talk a little bit about gaming because God's reality has been completely set aside in favor of the counterfeit reality, as I call it, in the gaming world. I want to spend a few minutes on gaming because a lot of people don't understand the gamer. They're going, why is this 27-year-old sitting for hours behind this gaming machine, spending 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week on this thing? I don't get it, people say. Well, first of all, it's an addiction, and we shouldn't look down our nose at people with an addiction. Their brains are working differently, operating differently under scans than the rest of ours. Jesus had infinite compassion for the people that came to him for healing. Whether their lifestyles got them into it or not, he wanted to heal them, not condemn them. So just a quick disclaimer on that. But let's understand them a little bit. What is it? What is the draw to gaming? First of all, and all of these, by the way, every bullet point you're about to see, it's something that we should be getting out of real life. But the gamer is getting out of the counterfeit reality, this other world here. First of all, community and belonging. I don't know if you know this, but most online games, massively multiplayer online games, these are persistent worlds, meaning they're always on. It's not like you hit reset on your Mario on Nintendo and you choose when to play. No. The game is always going. And if you're not over there, you're missing out. Your friends in the game, your guild, your clan, they're doing things and you're not leveling at the same pace as them, so you're going to be left behind and not be able to hang out with them anymore. And there's this pressure. You got to be at the raid on Sunday. Oh, if you quit on this, or if you actually think about cutting down your gaming time or getting off your addiction, terrible verbal abuse comes your way in this gaming world. It's really, really a scary thing, actually. But not just community and belonging, but also achievement. Not just relationships with people in the game because you don't have those in the real world, but also this sense of power and accomplishment, and I've done something. There's this illusion of manhood, twice as many male gamers as female gamers. Without all the risks of a career and a relationship and being a father, you can go into this gaming world and feel like you're somebody. In this hyper-competitive world, you're acquiring gold and armor and wealth and rank and magic spells and all of these things, and you get this feeling of accomplishment. But they did a study back in 2002, interview of players of a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And they asked them, how many of you feel better about yourself? Do you feel better about yourself when you're playing the game? Only 25% of them only said that they feel better. So they know it's an illusion. When they come out of the game, there's that emptiness. A third thing, or actually while we're still on achievement, here's a quotation from Niels Clark. He's a recovering gaming addict and now a scholar of games. He's a internationally known expert in gaming. He said, good games provide the illusion that a player's accomplishments were insurmountable feats, the stuff of poetry and legend, when in fact, every one of the player's successes and victories were planned. The game designer put that in there. You didn't actually do anything, but you feel like you did something. Escape. Talk to a gaming addict in a counseling setting like Kevin Roberts, who counsels video game addicts, and all of them are escaping some issues in their life that they don't want to deal with. Moving on, a fourth thing that is a draw to gaming is this role-playing issue. A lot of gamers, this isn't all of them, not all gamers qualify under all of these points, but some of them don't like who they are in the real world. They feel like a loser, maybe the female feels unattractive, but in the game she can be an attractive woman. The loser can feel like a victor, like a hero. In fact, you don't just watch the hero on the screen anymore, you can be the hero. So that's a powerful lure right there for role-playing. And you don't like your identity, you don't like who you are, and you can have your entire psyche, your spiritual, emotional fulfillment here in the game. Sad reality. While we're on this issue of escape and role-playing, there was a PlayStation ad that said, I live a double life. I set morality aside. And another ad said, live the life you've always dreamed of without any risk or danger to yourself. And you could tell how they advertise to you what their aim is. They're trying to get you on this role-playing thing, this escape, and you can live this double life. Another draw to gaming is a release and a reinforce of aggression. A lot of the games, obviously the first-person shooter games most prominently, are very aggressive. And what they found in a study was hostility was increased both in subjects playing a highly aggressive video game and those playing a mildly aggressive video game. Very interesting. It just reinforces the aggression. It doesn't actually solve your problems that you have with frustration and anger in your life. Another draw to gaming is competition, or the I'm better than you dynamic that started in heaven with Lucifer when he said, I will ascend to the throne of God. I will take the place of God. This promotion of self, survival of the fittest, dog eat dog. This whole dynamic within the competitive spirit is really played out in the video game world. Another draw to gaming is the discovery. A lot of gamers are discovery-oriented gamers. They are the ones who will explore every inch of territory in the game. They'll find the tricks, they'll find the cheats, they'll find the hidden worlds. And it's just, these people are brilliant people, by the way. Your average gamer is a genius, and their talents and their wisdom and their intelligence is being wasted away in this other world. But the discovery-oriented gamer spends hours in the game just exploring. Another draw to gaming is pleasure. One quotation from Niels Clark we read, the in-game play, the in-game shopping, the in-game sex. I didn't know, you may not have known that all three of those things were in the games, but he says, if it can be put together in a way that's somehow more pleasing, we might assume that designers will try to meet that mark. And of course they will. They're trying to create a world that's more pleasurable than the real world. So you go there, and the relationships and the shopping and the acquiring of wealth and the achievement and even the sexual stuff, it's just, this world is more fun. It's more pleasurable. What a lure. What a draw. The last thing is story. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the experts are saying that the video game designers are actually outperforming novel writers as the top developers of story and character development today. And so there's this need within the human heart, this sense that we are a part of something bigger, that we are a part of a story. And instead of discovering God's will for you as a part of his great drama that is passing before us in reality, we go and we find the fantasy novel or the movie, or in this case, the counterfeit reality of the video game. Now, by the way, when I talk about this issue of story, I'm working on a series right now that I'm going to be sharing with some young people in a part-time Bible position that I have at Great Lakes Academy in Michigan, and we're going through what we call the one true story. God's reality from the very beginning of angels in heaven and the fall of Lucifer all the way through the great drama of the redemptive history on planet Earth to the end of sin and suffering. What is the story we find ourselves in? How do we understand this, and how exciting is this reality? Well, it's not just a game anymore to the video gamer. We read from Niels Clark again, the human body can release a variety of chemicals responding to games as though they were a completely real physical experience. So in other words, your body doesn't know the game is not real. Reading on, visually, images seem to have the ability to immerse and enchant us with or without our permission. These are media that give experiences to our real eyes, ears, hearts, and brains. Experiences that professionals painstakingly design to be fun, breathtaking, and exhilarating. Wow, it's not just a game anymore. It's a secondary world. Look at this quote from Kevin Roberts, the counselor of gaming addicts. A strongly addicted player relates to this online world as the real world, and his or her other life is simply a necessary evil. They've created an alternate world to live within. And is game even a meaningful word anymore then? If you think about it, we had ping pong. That's a game, right? Well, Pong was a video game. Blip, blip, blip. But here we have not just a game. We have, look at the quotation here from P. Siobhan Scott in the book Game Addiction. Game developers create the worlds in which people live, and in that way they have close to godlike powers. So we're looking at something beyond just a game. We're looking at a counterfeit creator. The game designer is creating a world, a different reality from God's reality. And by the way, if we're trying to escape God's reality, if we're trying to escape into a counterfeit reality, we're trying to escape God. So the fantasy world is an escape from God. That's a scary thought. And we're swallowing our psychological identity, our emotional identity in this reality. Well, they did a study actually at Nottingham Trent University in 2011 along with Stockholm University where they discovered game transfer phenomenon. This is where they're losing touch with reality. This is really serious. Players in a virtual world begin blurring the lines between the game and reality once they come out of the game. In other words, they're doing things in the real world as if they're still in the game. Now you think about our mass shooters and how often they were video gamers. Now, am I saying all video gamers are going to go shoot people? No, of course not. But there is a danger when we're starting to blur the lines between reality and a game where you're running around shooting for fun. Scary thought. Reality then becomes dull. These places, says Niels Clark, are in direct competition with the rest of reality. Most of the entertainment we've had in human history gives us natural breaking points. The chapter ends, the film ends, or there's a commercial break. Most games are set up to be played for long periods of time. It's built into the fabric of the gamer culture. It's encouraged by game marketing. And there aren't enough good stopping points in most games for people to stop, look at the clock, and realize that it's time to sleep. He says this will then dull the taste for reality, and the mediocrity of reality seems like torture by comparison. So what do? You go back to the game, because this is where life is more fulfilling. This is the world that you enjoy. The mediocrity of reality is so boring. You actually have to work hard and invest and have risk, and real life is just harder. You don't always get immediate rewards for things. You don't get those dings, and it's just not as fun. Well, it's not just game designers who have close to godlike powers. Players delight in controlling growth, development, and even evolution in video games. And any fan of a god game, as they're called, enjoys the opportunity to exert complete dominance over the people and places in the game. And then it's not just god games, but listen to the sound of the experience of the gamer. From Niels Clark, our minds are set free to explore and exercise heightened abilities and senses in a space that still looks and feels real. Games take our senses beyond the confines of reality. At the same time, these sensations also allow the inflation and extension of our consciousness, unique ways of being. Can you hear the whisper of the serpent there? You can have godlike powers in the game, things you can't do as a human. You can do in the inflation and extension of your consciousness, a more perfect version of yourself. Wow, scary thought. But it is an addiction. It's a recognized addiction with treatment centers around the world. And in the full seminar, we explain how addictions work in the brain. You have to understand, because you may have an addiction to something else. Maybe it's not media. Maybe it's not gaming. Maybe it's pornography. Maybe it's food. Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's shopping. Maybe it's all of these things are not chemical addictions, cocaine and alcohol and nicotine. These are process addictions, and they can be just as powerful as chemical addictions can be, even more powerful actually. And we cover that. But I want you to understand the pleasure centers of the brain. They did a study in 1954, the Milner study, where they hooked up to a rat's brain some stimulators to stimulate his nucleus accumbens, which are the pleasure receptors. And they would make it so that the rat just had to tap a lever, and it would stimulate electrically, and he would feel good, like he just accomplished something. Well, you know what happened in the study? It didn't require any discipline. He just had to push the lever. It was a quick fix, no effort required. And so what did he do? He just stopped eating. The mice stopped eating and were on the brink of death. Now, if you think about our own lives, has media become the lever? The game, the pornography clip, the movie, the iTunes track, the texting. Actually, Facebook has been shown to elicit a pleasure response, the same area of the brain as food and sex, when you post something private about yourself on Facebook or just information on Facebook. Has media become that lever for us, where we go to that for the pleasure sensation, and the bread of life, we've stopped eating it, and we're on the brink of death, spiritual death. That's my fear. But God's reality over here is immensely pleasurable. I agree with Ravi Zacharias, who said that the closer we get to a pure and holy pleasure, the closer we are to the heart of God, a pure and holy pleasure. The further we get from a pure and holy pleasure, the further we are from the heart of God. So if we're going off into immoral pleasures, of course we are far from the heart of God. But also, if we're into a cold and grumpy religion, that's far from the heart of God too, because it's not the kind of abundant living with joy and a sunny religion that Jesus has for us. God is a God of pleasure. And if you think about how he designed pleasure to operate, think about it. Pleasure follows when you do something altruistic and help a needy child. When you study the Bible and share truth with somebody and that light bulb goes off, pleasure follows. When you view God's nature and appreciate the beauty of what he's created, it's not an immense crazy high like a pornography clip or like a sugary milkshake, but the peaceful, serene thought of, wow, the Lord has made something beautiful here. Pleasure follows. Pleasure follows when you enjoy a beautiful picnic on a sunny afternoon in a family setting. When you study something from the Bible for yourself and get it, and God shows you some truth, pleasure follows. When you invest in a relationship at the marital level, pleasure follows. When you attend a joyful wedding celebration, accomplish a difficult task, or enjoy nutritious food as God designed, pleasure follows. Life as God designed it is extremely pleasurable, and I've lived on both sides of this. I've been the media addict. I've been eating what I want, watching what I want, finding pleasure in the things of this world. But I'll tell you, life is more fun over here. There's more joy, there's more abiding peace, there's more meaning, and being over on this side, I would never, ever go back. Not a chance. In fact, what they've shown in the studies, Kaiser Family Foundation found that this lever that we're tapping, the more media we use, actually, the less happy we are. Now that we go to the media, the entertainment, the exciting things to stimulate so we can go, woo, yeah, I feel good. But actually it makes us less happy, and look at the next slide, more bored. The more media we consume, the more bored we are. Isn't that fascinating? So if you unplug from media and you're not doing all the exciting things, you're less bored, not more. Very interesting. This reminds me of my Mountain Dew addiction that I had. I would get up in the morning, chug a can of Mountain Dew for breakfast, drink the big gulps throughout the day, drink 3 liters at a time throughout an afternoon and evening at times. And I'll tell you, after that morning Mountain Dew, about 60 minutes later, there was this crash, right? And so it didn't fulfill, it didn't sustain. I needed the real substance, the real food. But going deeper into this, it really is even more scary when we think about the appetite, the taste buds. After drinking Mountain Dew, I wasn't really interested in broccoli. It just didn't taste good after Mountain Dew, because the Mountain Dew had me, woo, yeah, that's like a party for the taste buds. Broccoli, which actually does taste good. I enjoy broccoli now since I've given up Mountain Dew, but broccoli was distasteful to me. And so the Bible speaks to this. The Bible says that God's word is sweet to our taste, sweeter than honey. So the Word of God is, objectively speaking, it's very sweet. But for most of us, it's boring. I don't have any time to read that. It's uninteresting. I'm bored. I fall asleep. Why? Look at the rest of the verse, or a different verse rather in the Proverbs. A sated man loathes honey. What does that mean? A sated man is a full man. So if I'm full with the worldly excitement and the entertainment, honey is so distasteful to me that I loathe it. The Bible is so distasteful to me that I loathe it. Wow. You know the story of Gideon, right? He had his soldiers come out. God had to whittle the army down to the people that were going to be most suited for this job, and he had them go to a pond, right, or a creek, and they were to drink from the water. And this is how God determined who was going to fight in the battle. Those who got down on their knees like this and drank the water like that, they were not suited for the battle. You ever wonder why? The people that were suited for the battle did not get on their knees. They were like this. What's the difference? These guys had their eyes up on the greater mission and purpose. Now, is water bad? No, but how we relate with it may distract us. So maybe it's not an immoral movie or a worldly music band or any of these things, but maybe it's something that's okay for you. Maybe it's something that's morally innocuous or maybe kind of closer to the edge, but it's okay. But the way we interact with it, if we're getting our eyes off of the greater purpose, look at the quotation from 1 Corinthians. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord. So if I'm doing anything in recreation, amusement, entertainment, if I'm doing anything that is taking my eyes off of the work that the Lord has for me, then I am missing out on something. It's a diversion from God's plan for me. A true form of recreation upbuilds me. I have a sense of God's presence, and it empowers me to go back to my work for the Lord with new vigor. But amusement and entertainment has a tendency to distract me from the Lord. Now, for me in my life, I have a confession to make. And this is pretty raw. This is still pretty fresh for me. It's only a couple years since I gave up my vice, and that was college basketball. I would spend 4 hours a week watching my Michigan State basketball religiously. It didn't matter what else was going on. I cleared the calendar for that. And I had the thought, during these hours, am I thinking of the mission and purpose that I have as a child of God? Am I thinking about the Lord at all?